So I'll just say briefly that we are trying to seek some funding, sponsorship, things like that. I think Christopher had a great idea, and I agree with that. That's in the new year. But like I said in the last week, and Christopher also likes it, is that we should go and make video like 10 episodes of history of physics. So we are putting in the right sense.
Wait a second.
What happened? Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have the time to make videos really, but I mean, if you're going to make them, I'd be interested. I can watch them, but I'm like way too busy to actually produce anything. But yeah, I mean, I like
actually we can do. Now, what I was saying is that we can do like history of physics like once a month or something. We can time.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, if you want to make a presentation and do that once a month, that's fine. That's no problem. Sorry, I didn't understand what you meant there.
Yeah. Then we can discuss and also bring in some experts. I think we have expertise because you start with Galileo, and I want to see the European interpretation of that. What I understand it, what I learned, I'll present it briefly, but then the European understanding of it, maybe some other person from Italy or even Emmanouil may know, or you may know little more about it. And maybe, Emery Taylor has showed me some things, but I don't know whether he will be able to come in. So, I'll present it like briefly, 10, 15 minutes of what I understand from classical physics. So that's where we start from. Why the classical physics came into being, what was it before? Before that, I know that there was Reformation, there was Renaissance and all that. It's during the Renaissance period. That's briefly what I know. But what was before that? There was a dark Europe or something, and people were believing in, blind faiths and all that.
Oh, so the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages, and then you had the Renaissance. Yeah, I mean, that is a bit of that's a bit of a deep subject to go into. It's hard to know what's really to say about that. It's a narrative of history, but we really don't know all that much about that period because there wasn't a whole lot going on. I think, there was the fall of Rome, and then a lot of Christians in Europe after that were kind of waiting for Jesus to come back. So they expected that to happen quite soon. So they were like, well, what's the point in doing anything? Because Jesus is going to be here and then we're gone. So, and then I think like a couple hundred years passed or something. They were like, oh, he's not coming back. So for now, so we're just going to have to like build schools and all of that and hospitals and blah, blah, blah. And so the priests did a lot of that. The monks, they were the people who set up the first schools. But I mean, I wouldn't even know if that really fits into the Dark Ages category. I mean,
the idea is that people.
But there was a lot of stuff going on in the Dark Ages that wasn't like there was research and stuff of that kind. But then I think, there other stuff happened. There was also a lot of fighting going on. The Muslims were coming in and they were like burning down.
Sorry, can I leave? Can I leave the?
So a lot of knowledge was lost during the Dark Ages to the Middle East, and then they developed, mathematics, algebra, alchemy, and a lot of medicine. But it was based on the knowledge that was taken from those places like Alexandria, which is technically in where is it? Egypt.
Oh, so, Gerd wanted to leave. Okay. Okay, we will see you next week.
See you, Gerd.
Yeah, see you later.
Okay.
Next week, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Renaissance was this was a different kind of thing. They, in a way, they were kind of good. They were, it's hard to say. I mean, there was like a lot of magical thinking going on during the Renaissance. They were like getting into sigil magic and all of this. So it was kind of pushing against the church in that sense, and also. They also started thinking in terms of evolutionary science a bit, but that was based on Christian ideas of this thing called the what was it again? The chain of being, I think it is. So you've God at the top, Then you have the seraphim angels and the different levels of angels. Then I think you have man, then the animals, then the plants, and then the minerals. And so that was the chain of being, in a sense. So so they liked that idea, but then at the same time they were already traveling all around the world, and they met with the Africans, you know, who lived in Africa, and they were expecting the Africa to be the wealthiest, like really wealthy, you know, with loads of palaces and jewels and all of this stuff. So they were like, can't wait to get down there and meet the African royalty and begin exchanging knowledge and stuff. But when they got there, they found like they were all, there was very few people there for a start, but those that were there were living in like tiny little mud huts, and they were just basically like homeless nomads in a sense. So they were pretty disappointed. So but they kept trekking through Africa looking for these civilizations that they'd heard about, like Queen of Sheba and stuff, and they didn't find any of it. But what they did start to find were like monkeys and all of these things. And they said one of them was called the orangutan, which means man of the forest. So they didn't know what a monkey was. They didn't know what an orangutan. So they thought, oh, there's a man who lives in the forest. So then they were like, okay, so that thing up there is a man, the big orange hairy thing. And the people that we met earlier living in the mud huts, they're also men. But then they were like, that's clearly not a man, that's a monkey. So then they were like, so are the, you know, they didn't understand, like, because you know, it was all new to them. They were trying to classify things, and then they started classifying them in terms of the chain of being. So there was like man over monkeys, obviously, and animals. So does that mean that men are over the Africans, like the guys living in the mud huts? And then they said, well, presumably that's true. So that's how kind of racism became a thing. Although it wasn't racism at that point, because they literally did not, they kind of thought that they were subhuman, like literally not human. So yeah, so then that's how, well, I mean, the slave trade was already fully going on in Europe long before this. You know, the Muslims used to come in and take Christians as slaves, and they take the Jews as slaves. They also took like 100 million Africans as slaves. That's later, we'll get into that. But and then the Christians would take Muslims and Jews as slaves, and the Jews would take Muslims and Christians as slaves. So there was no rule against slavery, and in fact, it was enshrined in Judaism and Islam as like a holy thing to do. But so by extension, it was also kind of enshrined in Christianity. But then Christianity had this other viewpoint where it was like, over time, we realized actually, no, you're not allowed to own people as slaves. Like, it's pretty obvious from a Christian perspective that's just not right. So, but it is still correct in Islam and Judaism, which is why there's actually, I think there's about 8,000 slaves living in Israel at the moment, and God knows how many in Islam, Middle Eastern countries. But so after that, so slavery was a thing anyway. So then there was no, but I think they kind of had a truce where they were like, all right, we won't take each other as slaves. And then they had these people who they thought were monkey, kind of half men, half monkeys. So they were like, oh, we can take these as slaves because they're not human. So that's pretty interesting. But the Muslims took like 100 million or more slaves back to their countries, and obviously America with the Jewish slave trade they took, because the Jews owned all those boats, and they used to sell the slaves in slave markets in Rhode Island and stuff. But the markets were closed on Saturdays, which is the Jewish Sabbath. So that's when they closed the markets, because they were the ones controlling the slave trade. So. But if you go to America now, you know, I think 12% of the population is African. But if you go to the Middle East, who had like way more slaves, black slaves, where's the 12% population of black people in the Middle East? It doesn't exist. And the reason why that is because they were brutal, like, to their slave population. They wouldn't allow them to reproduce. They castrated them all and turned them into eunuchs and stuff. So, but no one gives out about the Muslim slave trade. It's just, oh, white people are bad. So this is the kind of shit we deal with, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think I went off the point there a bit.
The thing is that I will touch upon that. What I'm saying is that what led to physics, like Galileo, he was not accepted by the church. So that's the key point. The church actually kind of alienated him, so to say, from the church, because he is presenting things which is anti-God type of thing, because they said that this is against the God, the worship of God or Christ, right? Yeah, so that was the key point. That's the key point I want to make it. I don't want to go into the...
Well, yeah, I mean, there is stuff, though, I think I'm getting confused between Galileo and then there was Copernicus. But I think was Galileo put under house arrest or something for suggesting that the Earth went around the sun.
Yeah.
He was put under house arrest, but that was about it. And then I think he even said, like, on his deathbed or something, he recanted, or maybe beforehand, he recanted and said, actually, the Earth doesn't go around the sun or something. But by that time, his ideas had already proliferated, and other people started taking them up. And really, at that point, like, I don't think Copernicus, well, like, he wasn't. I don't think the church did anything to him. Like, they didn't put him under house arrest. They certainly didn't burn him at the stake, like Bruno. But then again, Bruno, he was a very interesting guy as well. I think he suggested that the stars weren't really small or galaxies, or not, well, they didn't know about galaxies, but that they were actually big and far away. So, but then again, I think they're saying that he might not have been burned for that particular heretical idea. He had a lot of other stuff going on. He believed in a lot of magic and stuff like that was like really, really frowned upon. So, but I think in terms of Christianity and physics, some of the greatest mathematicians in physics were Christians, and the whole logic behind. I think in the Christian Bible, it says that you have to go and, like, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but find out how God's creation works. So it's perfectly okay to look for answers. But yeah, like, if they seem to contradict other stuff in the Bible, then that's going to be a problem. So, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's just the way it is. So if you think
that's a key point. Yeah,
the great chain of being that I spoke of earlier.
Yeah.
And then that morphed into what we would consider like full-on racist ideas today.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, that became evolution. Like, that became the bedrock of evolution. And then, of course, evolution's like, initially they would be like talking about, oh, these people are higher than these people and blah, blah, blah. But then over time, and especially accelerated in the modern age, it's become like, oh, well, we don't want to not offend anyone, but it's basically they have to correct it so that it's more politically correct or more palatable to the most people. And the way they do that is to say that, oh no, like, there is no, teleology to evolution. There's no endpoint. There's no purpose. It's just shit. Shit's happening randomly. So humans aren't better than animals, and like, we're not like the evolutionary peak of anything, which was initially what the whole point of the pyramid of evolution was about, and the chain of being. And God doesn't exist because evolution explains everything. So now we're all just the same. So basically, they're talking now about, like, removing human rights and the rule of law, and that you won't have any more right than, like, a dog or something, because animals and humans are the same. We're all on the same level. So this is the danger of these kind of ideas when they're, I'm obviously saying that all humans are equal. I think is perfectly valid. I'm a Christian, so I'm not in favor of slavery, obviously, and Christians generally weren't in favor of slavery.
That's a good point.
So we're all like, we are different. I mean, we have to acknowledge that there are differences between the races, and And, you know, so like black people have very athletic, good music sense. And then obviously Asians and such have tremendous ability at imitating things to an almost mind-boggling degree. And they're also very smart and in a lot of ways. And yeah, so I think white people have been fairly good at building societies. That's generally what we're sort of classed as good at. And other things like literature and science as well. So it's all good. I mean, I think, I hear in West Africa now that they're developing the first writing over there now for the first time. You can go online and look at their scripts, you know, because before this was all verbal. And
what is that?
In West Africa, they're developing their own written scripts for the first time.
Oh.
So you can go and look at that. I mean, they would obviously have like whatever languages were brought down from Europe would be around French and
from Swahili or something.
Well, Swahili I think is somewhere else. Is it further down south or something? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not very good, but I did read it. I did read an article online about it, and you can see the different. You see that the problem is their languages are really complicated, and they contain lots of different noises that aren't really related to any of the other languages in the world. Because like all of our languages, like in Europe, over in India, and even over to like China and Japan, like they all have something in common. Like we can see a thread, but I think these languages over in West Africa are very different. I don't know if there's any connection, but there could be. Like I could be wrong about that. But anyway, so they have
voices,
they have like clicking sounds, and it's just completely different. So, and they also have very complicated word structures, I think. So it was always, well, they never thought about it, I guess. They mustn't have ever actually decided, hey, we need a written language. But now that they are considering it, the difficulty is how to represent all of these sounds as symbols. And so, but what they're producing is really cool. It looks really good. And so once that gets going, and you know, you never know what could happen in the future. I mean, I think Nigeria is pitted to be some sort of space base in the future. They're hoping to move a lot of, you know, like Musk and these people want to build all the rockets there, and so that'll be the blast off point. So they would have a huge spaceport in Nigeria. But in order for that to happen, there needs to be political stability in the region, and that's just not the case because it's divided between north and south. I think the Muslims are up the north, Christians are down the south, and I think the Christians they would have been a colony of the British, which is why they're Christian, whereas the caliphate would have invaded from the top and taken the north. So there's a difference in education between the British educating the Christian Nigerians and I guess, I don't know who educated because there would have been no centralized system there. So basically the Christians have like a much higher education, but for some reason the Muslims actually run the country. Like they have all the power. So it's this like the Muslims are saying, hey, you have to slow down and wait until we catch up so that we can all be the same. Yeah, equal, but they won't be equal because they'll still be in power, and you know. So, but actually, someone interestingly said that that's what they're doing to the West. They're saying to the West, "Hey, hold on now, you have to slow down, wait for everyone else to catch up." You know, like in the third world and everywhere else. I remember there's some Christian guy from Nigeria told me this, and I was just like, yeah, like. Tell them no, like, or not, don't tell, you know, just like whatever, like who's gonna wait for these people to catch up? It's up to them to do that, you know. So that's my opinion anyway. I don't necessarily think the West should reduce our standard of living just so we're all crap. You know, fuck that. Like it's the same as like, oh, humans are obviously, I don't even think we are animals. Like we have such skills that completely separate us from animals. Like obviously we are part animal, but we're in a different class. Like So to reduce this down to animals and say we're all the same, no, again, craziness. So that's my rant over. I had absolutely nothing to do with
that's all right. So this is my proposal. The episode 1, I start like 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes of description, what led to physics. So just 10 minutes I want to get to. I don't want to hamper over other things, but I just want to see what Galileo, my version of what I understand it, how the Europe was and the Reformation and Renaissance. And people said, okay, we don't want to be subjective, because there are a lot of subjective things. We want to be more objective. So that's how the physics, and then Galileo dropped from the Leaning Tower of Pisa and that gravity. So the 10 minutes I will get to is gravity thing. Then you have 10 minutes where you describe about theology and physics, what theology led to physics. For example, you mentioned about the classification, the hierarchy in terms of, so you can describe that the first 5 minutes.
I already have.
Yeah,
I just did it there.
I mean, no, but we will start fresh the new year. I will put like history of physics, 16th century, at the first episode 1. What led to classical physics or something like that. You can put that, and then the 10 minutes we'll introduce, and 10 minutes you give your version, because you're from the Europe, from the Christian version.
I'm just giving you what I know.
Yeah, you can do the same thing.
You see, if you were to talk to someone else, they will give you a completely different.
That's fine.
Thing,
that's our viewpoint. That's fine. But somebody want to do that. That's fine.
It's basically like how you read history, what you include, what you exclude. So I'm just giving you a version that you probably
that's fine.
haven't heard.
Yeah, we need that. We need that different perspective, because we always see that, but we give from that, and then somebody can comment on later on. What I'm saying is, so absolutely. 10 and 10, 20 minutes, right? After 20 minutes, we start talking about classical physics, what classical physics is doing. So the next 40 minutes or so, we'll describe how Galileo came up, briefly came up with this equation of motion and also of gravity and acceleration and all that. Whereupon Newton picked it up, and then he developed the universal, the universality of that thing. So that's it. So now episode 1, maybe like an hour each.
Yeah, good idea. Episode, maybe it'd be interesting if you can come up with some like what would be needed there. Well, what would be good is like if you can come up with something new, like an interesting angle on it, or someone's research someone who's already done research into it that you think is particularly good, then you could discuss that, or you could you could do your own research, obviously. But so it's not a bad idea at all. So
no, the idea is that we want to tie up what we are doing, because we are at different points. We want to tie up that. So we are the perspective of the history, and then we develop why the quantum gravity. The idea is why the quantum gravity developed. So for that we need the history, and then we move it to Maxwell. After that, the thermodynamics and Maxwell, episode 2 probably. And I'm saying, I think I have written it, what each episode should be. We can always change that depending on how we go. But like episode 2, maybe typically thermodynamics and the Maxwell thing. And then episode 3, maybe either the theory of relativity and then the quantum physics, how the quantum physics came into being, and so on and so forth. That in between, like black body radiation and all that. Yeah. And then at that time, the key thing is that at the time of Newton and gravity, Galileo and all, even Maxwell, I'm not sure about Maxwell, but they didn't know about the structure of the atom. Like Rutherford came up, Dalton's theory, for example. It talks about atom as the unit, but it says that is indestructible, right? Dalton. But the Rutherford came from Australia, and they said, yes, you can break. I found from my experiment, which I think kind of resonates the new LHC, is very similar to Rutherford's setup. It's a more advanced level of that. So he set up that, and he showed that there's a big thing in the middle. He called it nucleus, which actually does not allow the radiation to go through. It reflects that thing. So he said that no, the structure is of the atom. The atom is not like that. There is a nucleus, and then there is an electron that's going around, right? So I think that one people know later on, and so the quantum aspects.
Brownian mechanics.
Yeah. So they didn't know. So Newton knew it's a neutral atom, right? So he said that it's like ping pong or billiard balls hitting each other, and then what is something is driving into the the gravity. Eventually Galileo and Newton said something is driving that thing. Everything. If you throw up, it is going something ball up. It is going to come down. So it always attracts towards the center of the earth. So like that, he said it's true. The earth itself, is going around the sun and it's attracted to the sun. So that is he called like a universal gravity. And then all the galaxies, everything held together by this gravity. So what it means is that gravity became the central force. And at that time, they didn't know, actually the atom is not really neutral, once you have particle physics. And now, like Dr. GIMSA, Andreas GIMSA said that you can actually calculate those forces of each of these electromagnetic thing, and you can show that the gravity is a result of that. Of course, they are going to cancel each other, so the gravity will be weaker. Will naturally be weaker because a lot of it is canceling each other. But there is magnetic field, there is electric field. There's a net magnetic. Yeah, so that creates quantum gravity kind of thing. That's the idea. We'll develop, of course. So the history will give you why Newton and this thing they didn't consider. And even then, by the time of Maxwell, they knew about Faraday experiment and all that. They knew about electric and magnetic field. So like that,
Rajan.
So the history will tell.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I have to go though, because I have.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay,
no,
great.
I'm just giving a brief.
By the sounds of it, just to continue with the thing, I think Gerd's possibly going to give a presentation.
Yeah, that's fine.
In the coming months, in a month or two or one, and you said maybe we'll look into this idea of templates where you'd have like motivation and problem definition, maybe something like that.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
That'd be
I think that's a good idea.
Help with the focus.
Yeah, we want to understand. I think when I look at the percentages, I'm saying approximately, like a thumb rule, like 20% I understand, to be more frank, but we have to increase that to 50% or more. That's
right.
That's
well, this is it. Yeah. I mean, this is it. I think, well, my difficulty with, like, let's say with Gerd, for example, would be that he has a lot of equations which are very abstract and difficult to kind of comprehend. But over the months talking to him, I do have a better understanding of what his work is. Initially, I thought it was like Q factor and circuitry, like you were saying. But over time, I've begun to realize that there's, this thing about the hypersphere, which, it does occur in a lot of different models. And even the idea, of a hypersphere that the edge is increasing at the speed of light. So it's not something that but then he also has different, particle horizons and event horizons. So I mean, it's quite a complicated theory. He's got a lot of graphs and some cool predictions. So that's good. And then it's obviously similar to my research. I think one of the big issues and you brought it up before, I think, yeah, you did, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that. Well, one of the big issues anyway is that if you model the universe as a hypersphere, then you have to account for the curvature and why space doesn't appear curved but flat. And you mentioned that to me. And of course, my model has an explanation for that because it has both a flat tangent space and a curved hypersphere. But I think what Gerd's model might be lacking then in that instance is the same thing. But I'm pretty sure brought that up with him, and I don't remember his response. Do you remember? But anyway.
No,
so,
no, not completely. So the way, what attracted to me additionally about Gerd was the crystal lattice, because he talks about the lattice. So I am a material scientist, so that was another one that, that made sense to me, kind of, because it's like a supercrystal something, of course, but the explanation of with relation to actual measurements is the problem. Like that Nobel laureate, talks about super, what you call the time crystals, right? What's his name? I always forget. Yeah.
I'm
so
not
you
sure.
know who am I talking about?
I know about time crystals anyway.
Yeah. It was, what is his name? Anyway. I did the last time I remembered suddenly, but now I am not able. I may remember later on once we finish that. But he is one of the most recent one. I think we have a lot of common
it's not
things.
Penrose, is it? No.
No. The one from either, I think it's Central Europe, but he's here in the US now. Famous person. We are quoted. We are put a reference. His reference.
It's not Gehuft, no. Well, he's
time crystal. He
yeah,
talks about.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I will remember later on. But the thing is that, Koshek, what's his name? It sounds like a Czechoslovakian or Slovakian, but it could be Hungarian. It could be a Hungarian name.
Khrushchev.
But,
Khrushchev.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the idea is that, so it made sense to me when he said about the crystal things, that he's considering that, and shunt resistance things that made sense to me. But need more explanation in terms of the physics, breaking down to simpler things that we do in lesson plans, very similar to that. You explain
that's
to
a good point.
Children.
Yeah, I'm also a bit, I mean, some of the things, some of the things that I don't understand how they connect, like you have the hypersphere in a bulk universe with so that's the bulk would be the sub, what do you call it? Like the sub dimensions. But and then in that you have this crystal lattice. So I'm just not clear on how the whole thing works together.
Yeah, that's nothing.
So it's but it's not because I don't understand it. It's just that it hasn't been explained yet. So that's why we need these things. Yeah.
That's a lesson plan. Like I remember at high school I was teaching, and I usually do guest teaching. So I look at the other teachers, highly qualified teachers who have broken down like black hole. They explain nicely, with a lesson plan for kids to understand. So, but it's simple point. Some of them are diluted, but some of them, there are good calculations. So I think that approach is good. So I am also used to that because I taught high school physics. So I mean, we can find out. We'll
okay, cool. That. Yeah. So looking forward to that. I have to go anyway, so I'm going to end this. Would you want to continue, or will I end the stream?
No, I think we had a discussion. I think that.